In the grand mansion of Chief Duro Adetola, silence lived like an unwanted guest.
Like, comment, and subscribe for more videos.
Yet her footsteps echoed with emptiness. Outside, people bowed when Chief Duro's convoy passed. They called him generous, powerful, a man blessed by the gods themselves. But Abeni knew a different truth. She knew the man who forgot her birthday 3 years running, the man whose phone buzzed with women's names at midnight, the man who looked through her as if she were glass. Tonight, she sat alone at their dining table, a cold plate before her. Across the vast room, Oro lay watching, Chief Duro's dog, dark-furred and silent. The animal's eyes held something Abeni couldn't name. Intelligence, perhaps, or judgment. She pushed her food away, tears threatening. How many nights like this? How many years of being Mrs. Adetola in name only? Outside, Chief Duro's laughter drifted from his study, where he entertained guests who mattered. Abeni did not matter. Not anymore. Perhaps she never had.
Like, comment, and subscribe for more videos.
The morning Abeni discovered the documents, rain hammered against the windows like desperate fingers. She had entered Chief Duro's private office searching for aspirin, not truth. But truth has a way of finding those who've stopped looking. The papers lay scattered across his mahogany desk. Property transfers, all made out to a woman named Folake. Not just properties, bank accounts, shares, even this house, their home, was being quietly transferred away. Abeni's hands trembled as she read. 15 years of marriage erased with signatures. Her chest tightened until breathing became a battle. Oro appeared in the doorway, watching her with those unnerving eyes. The dog approached slowly, pressing his massive head against her shaking hands. For a moment, Abeni thought she saw something flicker in the animal's gaze. Pity, maybe, or warning. "He's replacing me," she whispered to the dog. "He's been planning this." Outside, thunder rolled like ancestral drums. Abeni stood, documents clutched in white-knuckled fists. Something inside her cracked then, a dam finally breaking after years of pressure. She would not simply disappear. Iya Orugan's compound sat at the village edge where civilization ended and forest began. Abeni arrived after dark. Her driver paid extra for his silence. The old woman emerged from shadows like smoke taking form, her eyes milk white, yet somehow seeing everything. "You come seeking power over a man's heart," Iya said before Abeni spoke. It wasn't a question. Inside the shrine, candles threw dancing shadows across walls covered in strange symbols. Skulls of unknown creatures watched from shelves. Abeni explained everything. The loneliness, the betrayal, the other woman. Iya listened, grinding herbs with practiced hands. "There is a way," the old woman finally said, "but spiritual debts must always be paid. The magic that binds love binds also the spirit. What you trap, you become responsible for. What you control, controls you in turn." Abeni barely heard the warnings. Desperation had made her deaf to wisdom. "I don't care about debt. I just want him back." Iya's blind eyes seemed to pierce through her. "Then we begin," she whispered. "But remember this night, child. Remember when the reckoning comes."
The ritual required 3 things. Chief Duro's blood, obtained from his razor. Abeni's tears, collected over 7 nights of genuine sorrow. And a vessel, an ancient calabash bottle Iya pulled from beneath floorboards that groaned like dying men. On the new moon, they worked. Iya chanted in languages that predated English, predated even Yoruba itself. She burned leaves that filled the room with purple smoke. The bottle glowed faintly, hungrily, as if awakening from centuries of sleep. "Place his essence here," Iya instructed, mixing blood and tears with substances Abeni dared not identify. "Seal it with your intention. But understand, once trapped, his true self remains imprisoned. What walks and talks will be shadow, obedient but hollow. The man you loved will exist only in this bottle, aware but unable to break free." Abeni's hands shook as she performed the final binding, then ice cold. Somewhere in the city, Chief Duro gasped awake in his mistress's bed, clutching his chest. The connection was made. The trap was set. Abeni held power she dreamed of for years. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, something whispered that she'd made a terrible mistake. The change in Chief Duro happened overnight, swift and complete. He arrived home the next morning confused, his usual arrogance dissolved like sugar in rain. "Abeni," he called, voice soft with unfamiliar vulnerability. "Where are you?" She watched from the stairs as this stranger wearing her husband's face searched for her. When their eyes met, his filled with something she'd never seen before. Adoration, pure and absolute. He rushed to her, taking her hands. "I don't know what happened," he said. "I woke up and realized, I've been blind. You're everything. How did I not see?" The words she'd longed to hear now sounded hollow. Chief Duro canceled his meetings. He sent his lawyers scrambling to reverse the property transfers. Falake was dismissed with a cold phone call that held no explanation. That evening, he insisted on cooking dinner himself. Badly, awkwardly, but trying. Across the room, Oro watched them both. The dog hadn't eaten since the ritual. He sat perfectly still, his intelligent eyes moving between Abeni and Chief Duro with something that looked disturbingly like sorrow. When Chief Duro reached to pet him, Oro backed away slowly, a low whine escaping his throat. Within days, Chief Duro's business empire began crumbling. His instincts, once razor-sharp, turned dull and confused. In meetings, he agreed to terrible deals, forgot important names, signed contracts without reading them. His investors grew nervous. His partners whispered concerns. "Chief seems different," his assistant told Abeni privately. "Not himself." But at home, he was the perfect husband. He brought flowers daily, remembered every preference, every detail she'd ever mentioned. They talked for hours, or rather, he listened endlessly while she spoke. It was everything Abeni had wanted, yet something felt profoundly wrong. He laughed at her jokes too eagerly, agreed with her opinions too quickly. His eyes held devotion, but no depth. One night she tested him. "I think you should sell the company," she said casually. Without hesitation he replied, "If that's what you want, I'll begin tomorrow." No argument, no discussion, just blind obedience. That night Abeni retrieved the bottle from its hiding place. Inside, something moved, shadows swirling like trapped smoke. She could almost see Chief Duro's true face pressing against the calabash walls, mouth open in a silent scream.
Oro's behavior grew increasingly strange. The dog stopped sleeping, instead pacing the mansion's halls at all hours. Servants whispered that they'd seen him digging in the old courtyard, the one Chief Duro had ordered sealed years ago. When Abeni investigated, she found fresh holes near the ancient Iroko tree, earth scattered everywhere. "Bad dog," she scolded, though her voice lacked conviction. Oro stared at her with those knowing eyes, then returned to digging. At midnight, his howling started, long, mournful sounds that made the servants cross themselves. One morning, Abeni found muddy paw prints leading from the courtyard to her bedroom, stopping directly before the cupboard where she'd hidden the bottle. Her blood ran cold. Could the dog know? Impossible. Yet when she looked into Oro's eyes, she saw something that transcended animal intelligence. Recognition. Purpose. Warning. Chief Duro, noticing her distraction, suggested they put Oro down. "He's disturbing you, my love. I'll call someone today." "No," Abeni surprised herself with her vehemence. Despite everything, she couldn't shake the feeling that Oro was trying to protect her from something. From what? She couldn't imagine. Not yet. Strange things began happening around the bottle. The cupboard where Abeni hid it grew inexplicably cold, frost forming on the wood despite Lagos's sweltering heat. Sometimes she heard whispers emanating from inside, fragments of voices, conversations from Chief Duro's past bleeding through the spiritual seal. One night, she woke to find every light in the house flickering. Oro sat at her bedroom door, illuminated by the strobing darkness, his eyes reflecting light that seemed to come from within. The bottle was hot now, burning through the cloth she'd wrapped it in. Inside, the shadows churned violently. She could see faces forming and dissolving. Chief Duro's face, yes, but others too. Men she didn't recognize. A woman weeping. A child reaching outward. "What is this?" she whispered, terrified. Oro barked once, sharp and commanding, then turned toward the courtyard. He wanted her to follow. She refused, clutching the bottle. But curiosity gnawed at her. What was buried beneath that Iroko tree? What had Chief Duro sealed away? The next morning, she waited until her hollow-eyed husband left for work, then followed Oro outside. The dog led her to the deepest hole he'd dug. At the bottom, something gleamed. Metal. Old. A box. The metal box resisted opening, rusted shut by years and rain. Abeni borrowed tools from the gardener's shed, her hands shaking with anticipation and dread. Oro sat watching, perfectly still, as if this moment had been written in stars long before she was born. Inside the box, she found photographs, dozens of them, showing Chief Duro decades younger with a man she'd never seen. They looked close, brothers perhaps or best friends. Beneath the photos, documents, a business partnership agreement signed by both men, a property deed showing joint ownership. Then, a death certificate.
The friend's name was Adiwali Ogunlesi. Date of death, 23 years ago. Cause, drowning. Suspicious circumstances. Investigation closed due to insufficient evidence. Abeni's blood turned to ice. She read further. Newspaper clippings showing Adiwali's widow had tried to claim their shared properties, but Chief Duro's lawyers had destroyed her case. The woman died poor and broken. Their young son disappeared into foster care. The final item made her hands go numb. Adoption papers. For a dog. Purchased from an animal shelter. Previous owner, Mrs. Ogunlesi. Name of dog, Oro. The world tilted. Oro wasn't just Chief Duro's pet. He was a ghost's witness.
Abeni couldn't breathe. The photographs fell from her shaking hands, scattering across the courtyard like accusations. Oro had belonged to the man Chief Duro betrayed, the man whose death built this empire, this mansion, her entire life. She looked at the dog with new eyes. How long had he been waiting? What did he remember? Animals couldn't seek revenge, but what if this wasn't just an animal? What if something else lived behind those intelligent eyes, something older and far less forgiving? You know what he did, Abeni whispered. Oro's tail moved once, not a wag, an acknowledgement. She remembered Iya Oregon's warnings about spiritual debts, about truth having its own power. By trapping Chief Duro's essence, had she somehow unleashed something else, given voice to the secrets he'd spent 20 years and a fortune burying? That night the bottle cracked. Just a hairline fracture, barely visible but definitely there. Abeni held it to the light, heart hammering. Inside, the shadows had multiplied. She could see Chief Duro's true face now, mouth wide and perpetual screaming. But behind him pressed other faces, Adiwale's most prominent among them. The dead don't forget, and apparently, neither did their dogs.
Chief Duro's hollowed version began falling apart. He forgot how to tie his shoes. Couldn't remember his own children's names. His lawyers called emergency meetings, whispering about mental decline, early onset dementia, whether power of attorney should transfer to his wife. Abeni watched her husband become a puppet with cut strings, and horror replaced her earlier satisfaction. This wasn't love. This was desecration. At night, she tried talking to the bottle, begging Chief Duro's trapped essence for forgiveness. The shadows inside churned angrily, but gave no response. Meanwhile, Oro's digging intensified. The dog worked with supernatural stamina, excavating deeper beneath the Iroko tree. Servants reported seeing him dig with human-like intelligence, pausing to examine what he found, then continuing with renewed purpose. One morning, Abeni discovered what Oro had finally unearthed: bones. Human bones, small and fragile, a child's skeleton wrapped in rotted cloth. Beside it, a journal, waterlogged but legible, Adiwale's journal. Her hands trembled as she read the final entries, written days before his death. He'd discovered Chief Duro embezzling their shared funds, confronted him. Chief Duro promised to fix everything. Then came the drowning. It wasn't an accident, Abeni breathed. The journal entries painted a picture of methodical betrayal. Chief Duro had planned everything, the drowning staged at the beach where Adiwale couldn't swim, witnesses bribed, police reports altered. But the worst revelation came in the final pages. Adiwale had known. He'd written a letter to his wife, hidden but never mailed, explaining everything. Chief Duro had found the letter, and with it, the couple's young son who'd witnessed something he shouldn't have. The bones belonged to a child who'd seen too much. Abeni vomited into the flowers. Her husband wasn't just a betrayer. He was a murderer, twice over. Everything, the mansion, the wealth, her entire marriage was built on graves. Oro sat beside the tiny skeleton, head bowed as if in prayer. When Abeni met the dog's eyes, she finally understood. This wasn't an animal. This was justice itself, wearing fur and patience, waiting 2 decades for the right moment. The moment when Chief Duro would be vulnerable, trapped, unable to run. She had provided that moment. Her love spell hadn't just imprisoned her husband, it had created the perfect conditions for the truth to rise. The bottle in her cupboard cracked further. Something was breaking free, and Oro was making sure it happened exactly as it should.
Abeni ran to Iya Orugan's compound, the cracked bottle wrapped in cloth that grew colder by the minute. The old woman took one look at her and sighed deeply. You found what was buried. It wasn't a question. Inside the shrine, Iya examined the bottle. The cracks had spread like spider webs, shadows leaking through. The magic has turned on itself, she explained. You trapped a man weighted with unpaid debts, spiritual debts. The spell became a prison, not just for him, but for all the truth he'd been running from. Truth has power, child. It wants out. It demands acknowledgement. What happens when the bottle breaks? Abeni asked, though she feared the answer. Everything trapped inside will be released. His true self, his memories, his crimes, but also everything he's been hiding from. The spiritual weight of true murders will manifest. The victims will have their voice. Ia's blind eyes seemed to see directly into Abeni's soul. That dog belongs to the dead. He's been marked by them, carrying their purpose. You thought you controlled your husband with magic, but you actually unleashed the very judgment he spent his fortune trying to escape. Outside, thunder rolled. The bottle grew ice cold. Abeni realized with crushing certainty Oro had been waiting for this since the day Chief Duro brought him home. The bottle shattered at midnight. Abeni wasn't even touching it. She woke to the sound of breaking calabash and rushed to find glass-like fragments scattered across her floor, glowing faintly with dying magic. The shadows were gone, released. Downstairs, Chief Duro screamed. She found him in the living room, backed against a wall, staring at things she couldn't see. "Adewale, no, please, I didn't mean... The boy, I had to, he saw, he would have told." His true self had returned. Not the hollow puppet, but the actual Chief Duro, with all his memories, his crimes, his guilt. And he was seeing his victims. Oro stood in the center of the room, but the dog had changed. His shadow stretched impossibly long, splitting into two human forms, a man and a small boy, their eyes filled with patient justice. The temperature plummeted, lights flickered. "You took everything from them," Abeni whispered, backing away from the husband she'd thought she knew. "You built our life on their graves." Chief Duro's eyes found hers, suddenly clear and terrified. "I had no choice. He would have ruined me. The boy saw. I couldn't let them destroy everything I'd worked for." "So you destroyed them instead." Chief Duro collapsed, his perfect mask finally shattered. He confessed everything, how he'd held Adewale under the waves while pretending to save him, how he'd found the boy hiding in their old office, how the child had fallen, or been pushed, from a height no one could survive. "I didn't want to," he sobbed, "but I'd already come so far, I couldn't go back with nothing." Abeni felt her world dissolving. Every dinner they'd shared, every conversation, every moment of their marriage, all of it tainted by blood she'd never known about. The servants had called the police by now, terrified by the screaming. Sirens approached in the distance. Oro returned to his normal dog form, but his eyes still held that otherworldly intelligence. He'd completed his purpose. 23 years of waiting, of watching, of being the perfect pet to a murderer, all leading to this moment. When the police arrived, they found Chief Duro raving about ghosts. They found the bones in the courtyard. They found Adewale's journal. The investigation they'd closed 2 decades ago roared back to life. As Chief Duro was led away in handcuffs, Abeni stood holding the fragments of the broken bottle. She'd wanted love. Instead, she'd unleashed judgment. "You knew," to Oro. "From the beginning, you knew what he was." The dog's tail wagged once.
The trial became national news. The billionaire philanthropist revealed as a murderer. His perfect empire built on betrayal and blood. Witnesses emerged, people Chief Duro had paid for silence who now found their courage. Adewale's widow's sister testified about the family's destroyed lives. The evidence, preserved by Oro's patient digging, was irrefutable. Abeni testified too, though her role in the revelation remained mysterious. She spoke about the dog who'd known truth that humans had buried, about how greed blinds men until they can't see the graves beneath their feet. Chief Duro received life imprisonment. His assets were seized, divided among his victims' surviving relatives. The mansion was sold. Abeni took nothing. How could she, knowing how it was earned? She returned to the village of her childhood, smaller and infinitely wiser. Oro came with her. The dog who'd been justice's patient instrument now became simply a companion to a woman learning to live with truth. One evening she asked him, "Were you sent by them, Adewale and his son?" Oro's intelligent eyes held hers. He couldn't answer in words, but Abeni understood. Some debts transcend death. Some truths cannot stay buried. Some dogs are more than they seem. Months passed. Abeni built a new life from honest work, far from marble halls and blood money. She planted a garden where nothing had been stolen to grow it. She helped at the village school, teaching children that integrity matters more than wealth. Oro grew gentler, the weight of his purpose finally lifted. But sometimes late at night, Abeni thought about the bottle, about how her desperate attempt to bind love had instead released justice. Had she been part of some larger plan? Had her loneliness been the key to unlock truth?
She visited Iya Orogan one last time. "You knew," Abeni said. "You knew what would happen." The old woman smiled. "I knew that magic always serves a higher balance. You thought you were punishing your husband for neglect, but the universe used your spell to punish him for murder. Your pain was real, child, but it was also the door truth needed." "And Oro?" "Spirits choose their vessels carefully. That dog was marked from the moment his first owner died. He waited with the patience only the dead possess. You didn't control this story, Abeni. You were simply part of its unfolding." Abeni left understanding she'd been both victim and instrument. Her loneliness had mattered, but so had justice. In the end, they'd served each other. A year after everything unraveled, Abeni received a letter from Chief Duro's prison. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity, the same curiosity that once led her to forbidden magic, won. Inside, his handwriting shook. "I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know, that dog saved my soul. I would have died still lying, still believing my own justifications. The bottle didn't just trap me, it held me still long enough for truth to catch up. I see their faces every night now. Adewale, the boy. I can't escape anymore. Maybe that's my real punishment. Not prison, but finally seeing what I'd become." Abeni folded the letter. She thought about greed, about how it blinds men until they can't recognize their own reflections, about betrayal that returns with patient, inevitable footsteps, about truth, which no amount of money or magic can permanently bury. Oro slept peacefully now, his purpose fulfilled. He was just a dog again. Or perhaps he'd always been a dog, temporarily inhabited by something larger. She'd never know for certain. What Abeni knew was this. She'd put her husband in a bottle seeking love, but the bottle had held something far more powerful, the reckoning that waits for every buried crime. Truth always claws its way back through the earth. Always. And sometimes it has 4 legs and patient eyes, and it waits as long as justice requires.